He laughed when I told him I loved him, like I was comedy hour, not a woman bearing her soul. That laugh, it changed everything. Please stay with me as I tell you my story, and please do not forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing with your loved one. His name was Malik. We met back in high school. He was the type everyone noticed. The way he carried himself, the way he talked, the way he smiled like he had the whole world figured out. I was Aaliyah, the girl who sat beside him in math class, the one who helped him study, listened to his late-night rants, and stood by him when others left. I thought what we had was real. I thought I mattered. For years, I watched him go through girls like changing outfit. He'd flirt, joke, and move on, but with me it was different, or at least I thought it was. He told me things he told no one else. He said I was the only person who really understood him. I waited, hoping one day he'd see me not just as his friend, but as someone he could love. One evening, after weeks of going back and forth in my head, I told him how I felt. I poured my heart out. My hands were shaking, and I could barely look at him. But I said it. I told him I loved him. I expected surprise. I expected silence. But I didn't expect laughter. Loud, careless laughter. He looked at me like I had just said the dumbest thing in the world. Then he leaned back, still laughing, and said, "You? Really?" That was it. No explanation. No apology. Just a joke to him. I stood there, trying to keep my face calm while everything inside me cracked. I felt small, stupid, and used. Not because I got rejected. People have the right to say no. But because he turned something sacred into something funny. I didn't cry in front of him. I just nodded, smiled like it didn't hurt, and left. That walk home felt longer than it should have. My chest was heavy, but my mind was clear. I promised myself that day I'd never let anyone laugh at my heart again. Malik didn't just reject me, he made me feel invisible. Like all those years meant nothing. I didn't text him after that. I stopped waiting for messages. I stopped replaying our memories. I started focusing on myself. The girl who once lived for his approval was gone. All that remained was a quiet fire burning in me, and I knew one day he'd look back and realize what he lost. But by then it would be far too late. I walked away from him like nothing happened, but the moment I turned the corner, my chest felt hollow. I didn't shed tears that day, but something in me changed forever. I stopped hoping for happy endings. That laugh didn't just hurt, it opened my eyes. I knew I couldn't stay the same girl anymore. I needed to grow, to move forward, to become someone he'd never recognized. The very next day, I started making changes. I transferred out of our shared department. I deleted every photo, every message, and every reminder of him. I didn't want to carry the weight of memories that made me feel weak. I got 2 part-time jobs and used every hour of my day to keep my mind busy and focused. I stopped going to the places we used to hang out. I avoided our mutual friends. I wasn't running. I was rebuilding. School became my escape. I studied harder than ever. While others partied and posted pictures, I stayed in libraries, wrote essays, and prepared for exams. I pushed myself to graduate early. I didn't want extra time. I wanted distance. I wanted to put space between who I used to be and who I was becoming. Every day I reminded myself, silently, that I deserved better. Not just from others, but from myself too. It wasn't easy. There were nights I lay awake, wondering if I had imagined it all. If maybe I was the fool for loving someone who never saw me. But each morning, I woke up stronger. I dressed better, walked taller, and spoke with more confidence. I wasn't pretending. I was becoming someone real. Someone solid. Someone I respected when I looked in the mirror. Eventually, I got an offer from a major firm in Atlanta. A fresh start. A new city. I packed up everything and left without saying goodbye to anyone from the past. It felt good to breathe in air that had no history attached. I made new friends, found a new rhythm, and started living for myself. There were no ghosts in that city, just new chances and new paths. Years passed. I didn't check up on him, didn't ask about him, didn't care what he was doing. I told myself that chapter was closed. But life has a strange way of circling back. One evening, at a charity event my company supported, I turned around and saw him. Malik, standing across the room, holding a drink, scanning the crowd. Our eyes met for a second, and in that moment, I realized I had changed more than I thought, because I didn't feel pain or anger. I felt nothing, just a calm silence. The kind that comes after a storm has long passed. Elijah wasn't someone you noticed right away. He didn't walk into a room trying to be seen. He didn't talk over others or flash a perfect smile to get attention. But he carried something different, peace. The kind of calm that makes you breathe easier without realizing it. I met him at the firm a few months after moving to Atlanta. At first, we were just co-workers. A few polite greetings, small conversations in the break room, short glances during meetings. He never pushed. He didn't try to charm or impress. He just listened. He remembered the little things, how I liked my coffee, which days I seemed tired, when to give space and when to offer company. Slowly, I found myself drawn to that quiet strength. He never once made me feel like I had to prove anything. With him, I didn't have to pretend I was fine all the time. We started having lunch together, then coffee after work, then late-night calls. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. He gave me room to be myself, and somehow, that space pulled me closer. One evening, during a walk, I opened up. I told him everything, not just the pain, but the fear I carried after it. I expected awkward silence or pity. Instead, he held my hand, looked me in the eyes, and kissed my forehead. No words, just quiet understanding. That moment stayed with me. From then on, things grew naturally. He never tried to fix me, because he didn't see me as broken. He respected my silence, celebrated my wins, and stood beside me without needing to be the center. With him, love wasn't loud. It was safe. It was real. Months later, he asked me to marry him, not in some grand gesture, but in a soft moment at home, over dinner, like it was the most normal thing in the world. And it felt right. I said yes, not because I was trying to prove anything, but because he had shown me what love could be without the pain, without the noise. We married quietly. No drama, no spectacle, just close friends, warm smiles, and promises that didn't need to be shouted. I wore a simple dress. He wore a calm smile, and I felt peace. A peace I hadn't known in years. It wasn't just about finding a husband. It was about finally finding someone who saw me, not for what I'd been through, but for who I had become. I never thought I'd find that kind of love, but I did, and it changed everything. The room was full of familiar faces in expensive suits, soft music playing in the background, and laughter floating between glasses of wine. I had been invited to the event because our firm was working on a major merger. It was supposed to be a night of formal smiles and business talk. I wasn't expecting anything unusual. I came in calmly, prepared for the usual handshakes and small talk. Then I saw him. He was standing near the buffet, holding a plate, talking to someone, laughing, though not like before. His face looked different. His hair was thinner, and his eyes didn't carry the same shine they used to. There was something tired in the way he stood. But it was him. Malik. For a moment, I froze. Not from fear, not from sadness, just surprise. I hadn't thought about him in a long time. I had moved forward, built a life, and found peace. But seeing him brought back a wave of memories, not all of them painful, just distant. Like looking at an old house you once lived in, but no longer recognized. He turned and spotted me. His expression shifted. The confident charm he once wore so easily seemed to fade. He looked stunned, like someone had shaken his world. He walked over slowly, unsure of his own steps. When he reached me, he said my name softly, like it still meant something to him, like he expected a spark to rise from the ashes he left behind. I smiled. Not the kind of smile you force. Not the kind you give out of kindness. Just a calm, polite smile. The kind that lets someone know they no longer have power over. I said hello. That was it. Nothing more. His eyes searched mine, maybe for a trace of the girl who once waited for his approval. But she was long gone. In her place stood a woman who didn't flinch. I didn't ask how he was. I didn't pretend to care. I just stood tall and let the silence speak. He asked if we could talk. I said I was here for work. Then I excused myself and walked away. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. There was no drama, no storm inside me. Only calm. That's when I knew I had truly healed. I joined a group from my firm and carried on with the evening like he was just another stranger in the room. Maybe to him, I had become a memory. But to me, he was a lesson, one that I had already learned and left behind. He kept finding reasons to be near me. Every time I turned around, he was there, pretending it was by chance, but it wasn't. He tried to act casual, like we were just two old friends catching up. But his eyes told a different story. They followed me through the room, not with warmth, but with something cold and unsure. Jealousy doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just stares. He asked about my life like he really cared, but I could hear the cracks in his voice. He wanted to know about Elijah. I spoke calmly. I told him my husband was kind, smart, and grounded. He nodded, pretending it didn't bother him, but it did. I saw it in his forced smile. He kept trying to compare himself without saying it directly, asking if Elijah was in the same industry, if he made good money, if he treated me well enough. His questions weren't for my sake. They were for his own pride. Then he asked something strange. He leaned in a bit and said, "Are you still the same girl who used to love me?" I looked at him, steady and clear, and told him no. That girl was gone. She disappeared the moment he laughed. I didn't say it to hurt him. I said it because it was true. I wasn't holding on to anything. I had no feelings left to hide or explain. He went quiet after that. I could tell he wasn't expecting honesty. Maybe he thought I still held a little space for him somewhere deep inside. Maybe he believed time would have softened the truth. But it didn't. Time had erased it. Not with anger, just with growth. For the rest of the evening, he stayed close, but didn't speak much. He watched from the side while I spoke with clients and joked with coworkers. He saw a version of me he had never known, and he didn't fit into it. That seemed to bother him more than anything else. His suit looked sharp, but it didn't match the man wearing it. He looked like someone trying to catch up to a life that had already passed him by. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about what he lost, the version of me he thought would always be there, waiting. But I wasn't. I had moved on, and no amount of small talk or old memories could change that. The message came late in the evening. Simple words, but heavy ones. Malik said he wanted closure. He didn't explain much, just asked if we could talk. I paused for a while before answering. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to be sure of my own reasons. I didn't need anything from him. I just wanted to close that door fully. So I said yes. We met at a quiet diner near 10th Street. It wasn't fancy, just a place with old booths and tired waiters. He was already sitting when I walked in. His face looked older, not just from time, but from life. The sparkle he used to carry was gone. There was a heaviness in his posture, like the world had been pressing down on him for too long. When I sat across from him, he gave a small smile. Not the charming kind he used to wear, just tired and unsure. He started talking slowly. No jokes, no arrogance. Just a quiet voice admitting he wasn't where he thought he'd be. He told me he was divorced now. No children. Said the relationship fell apart after a year. Too many arguments. No trust. No peace. He looked at me, not with pride, but with something close to regret. Said he remembered the day I confessed to him, that sometimes it echoed in his mind. He said he laughed back then because he didn't know what to do with real feeling, that he was immature, afraid of what mattered, and too used to being admired without effort. Then he said the thing I had always expected, but no longer needed. He told me he made a mistake, that if he could turn back time, he would have chosen me, that I was the one who truly saw him for who he was, and still wanted him. He said no one else ever looked at him that way again. I listened, not coldly, not with anger, just quiet understanding. I wasn't bitter. I didn't interrupt. I let him speak, but I didn't feel what he hoped I would. No spark. No part of me wanted him back, because the version of me that once needed his love no longer existed. When he asked if I ever thought about what could have been, I told him the truth. I said I used to, but not anymore. Life had moved forward, and so had I. That night, I didn't walk away with sadness or pride. I walked away with peace, because I knew I didn't need closure from him. I had already found it long ago. Elijah came home one evening quieter than usual. He placed his briefcase on the table, loosened his tie, and sat down across from me. I knew something was bothering him, but I waited for him to speak first. After a moment, he sighed and said a name I didn't expect to hear again so soon, Malik. He told me that Malik had applied for a position at his firm. Nothing too high level, just enough to get his foot in the door. Elijah said the resume was decent, but something about it felt off. He didn't know at first that it was the same Malik from my past. Not until he saw the name, the background, and put the pieces together. It was too much of a coincidence. I asked if Malik knew Elijah and I were married. Elijah shook his head. Said there was nothing in the application that showed he had any idea. That made it all clearer. Malik wasn't trying to build something new. He was trying to step into a world that no longer belonged to him. Elijah had already made a decision. He didn't confront him. He didn't call or send any message. He just quietly declined the application. Professional, simple, final. We both understood what it really meant. Malik wasn't looking for a job. He was chasing something else. Something he had lost. Something he thought he could reach again if he played it right. But this wasn't just about a job. This was about pride, about regret, about trying to fix what was never his to fix anymore. He had laughed once, thinking I would always be there. Now, years later, he was walking in circles around the life I had built without him. Elijah wasn't angry. He didn't speak harshly. He just told me he wanted me to know. Because our relationship was built on truth, and that truth made us strong. We sat there in silence for a bit, not out of discomfort, but understanding. We had nothing to fear from the past. We weren't shaken by it. We had moved far beyond it. Later that night, I thought about how strange it was, the way life works. People think they can leave others behind and return when it suits them. But time changes everything. The doors that were once open close quietly, and when they come knocking, all they find is the echo of their own choices. Malik was no longer someone I needed to avoid or forgive. He was just someone who had made his choices, and now had to live with them. I had already done my part. I had lived, healed, and let go. I never needed to shout to be heard. I never had to raise my voice or prove anything with noise. My life spoke for itself. That was the part Malik didn't understand. He expected anger, maybe even bitterness. But all he got was silence, and that silence said more than anything I could have screamed. Every morning, I walked into a building that held my name on a silver plaque. My office sat high above the city, filled with sunlight and quiet power. I didn't post pictures. I didn't talk about achievements. I simply lived my life, and somehow he saw it. Maybe through people we once knew. Maybe just by passing by the building where I worked. But he saw. And that was enough. He saw a woman he once laughed at, now walking with her head high, not out of pride but peace. He saw a woman loved deeply by someone who respected her from day one. He saw everything he once had the chance to value, and didn't. I never sent a message, never reached out. I didn't need to. I knew the silence burned deeper than any insult could. He didn't deserve chaos. He deserved to see the calm I had found, the life I had built without him. That was the revenge, living well, loving better, and never looking back. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I just chose not to hide anymore. I walked through every room like I belonged there. Because I did. I had earned it, not just through hard work, but through healing. I became the kind of person who didn't need approval. Not his, not anyone. And that quiet power stayed with me. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it doesn't come with slamming doors or angry words. Sometimes it's just you standing still while they run in circles. It's the peace that settles in your chest while they struggle to understand where they went wrong. Malik was chasing pieces of a life he once threw away. And I was no longer in that story. I never wanted revenge in the beginning. I wanted love. I wanted truth. But when that was denied, life handed me something better, growth. And in that growth, I found everything I needed. No spotlight. No applause. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I made it, while he stood outside the life he could have had watching. It was a quiet evening. Rain tapped against the windows, and Elijah had already gone to bed. I was finishing a cup of tea when I saw an envelope slipped under the door. There was no name on the front, no stamp, no sign of who sent it. But the moment I picked it up, I felt it. Something from the past was inside. I opened it slowly. The handwriting was familiar, slightly shaky but still his. Malik. His words started soft, like he wasn't sure if he had the right to write at all. He said he thought about me often, especially that day, the one where everything changed. He admitted he remembered my face when he laughed. He said it haunted him, the way my smile cracked, the way I stood still. He wrote that he had played that moment in his head 1,000 times and wished every time that he could take it back. He didn't beg. He didn't ask for anything. He just wanted me to know that he was sorry, truly sorry. Said he had watched my success from a distance, and that he was proud of me. Said Elijah must be a good man to have earned my love, and that he hoped I was happy. The letter was filled with emotion, but it felt too polished, like someone trying to make peace after the war was long over. I read it once slowly, then folded it back and sat with it for a while. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just felt done. Like whatever string had still connected us had quietly snapped. Not because of him, but because I no longer needed closure. I had already closed that chapter long ago. I walked over to the fireplace, lit a match, and dropped the letter into the flame. It curled at the edges, darkened, and disappeared without a sound. I watched it burn until all that was left was ash. Sometimes people say sorry too late. Not because they don't mean it, but because they don't understand that healing doesn't wait for apologies. Malik's words were gentle, maybe even honest, but they didn't matter anymore. I wasn't the girl waiting to be seen. I was the woman who had already moved on. That letter could have meant something years ago, back when I was still picking up the pieces, back when I still looked over my shoulder, wondering if he ever thought of me. But now it was just paper, old thoughts on something already buried. Elijah never knew about the letter. I didn't tell him. It wasn't worth mentioning. It didn't shake me or change anything. It was just another reminder of how far I had come. Malik's regret may have been real, but regret doesn't rewrite the past. It doesn't undo a laugh that cut too deep or fix the silence that followed. So I let the flames take it, let the past turn to dust. And when I stood up, I felt lighter, not because of his words, but because they no longer had weight. Every morning now begins with laughter, but not the kind that stings. It's the sound of my daughter running through the hallway, calling my name like I'm her whole world. Elijah kisses my forehead before he leaves for work, still treating me like I'm his best decision. And I finally breathe with ease. No weight on my chest. No ghosts hiding behind doors. The past doesn't scare me anymore. It shaped me, yes, but it no longer controls me. Malik is just a name now. A name that taught me the difference between being wanted and being valued. He chose his path, and that path left him behind. He lives in the background now. Quiet. Forgotten. Lost in a memory that has no place in the life I live today. I don't hate him. That would mean he still matters. He doesn't. I don't think of him when I laugh. I don't think of him when I win. I only remember him when I see how far I've come. And even then, I don't feel pain. I feel proud. Because I didn't stay broken. I didn't let a single moment define my whole story. This life wasn't handed to me. I earned it. I earned every smile, every peaceful night, every moment of calm. I rose when no one thought I would. I became someone I would admire. And now, when people see me, they see more than success. They see strength. Quiet, steady, and unshakable. Malik. He's just a chapter, one that ended long ago. And to anyone holding on to heartbreak, please remember, someone's rejection doesn't lower your, it reveals theirs. Keep moving. Keep growing. Let them watch while you rise. If this story meant something to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the end you didn't want leads you to the life you always deserved.